Some children can't handle all of the shots. We're talking about those kids. We're an intelligent group of parents that know that we need a vaccine schedule, but we think it's overloaded. In 1983, the shot schedule was 10. Now they're up to 38. Do we need hepatitis B in the first day of life? No. What we're saying is, you know what? Let's move it. Let's test the kids that can't handle these type of assaults so early in life.
When a disease takes hold and starts infecting the population, doctors and researchers always seek to find what they call patient zero, that nexus where the outbreak began. In the case of the current measles outbreak now spreading across America, they better call it the misinformation zero, because since a certain celebrity railed about not vaccinating her child, the lemmings have exploded in number, and someone may pay the ultimate price for such hubris. It's a pleasure to welcome into MidPoint Professor of Vaccinology and Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Pennsylvania. He's been a member of the CDC, and there's no patience for patients who have no clue what they're talking about. Dr. Paul Offit joins us. Dr. Offit, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
It must still grind you to this day to hear that Jenny McCarthy, when she and so many others came out and talked about how terrible it was and how measles vaccinations were connected to their children becoming autistic, and the fact that to this day there is absolutely no evidence to prove any such connection.
Yeah, quite the opposite. I would say that there's abundant evidence to prove that those concerns were ill-founded. I think our failure, frankly, as educators and clinicians, has been able to convince parents that these fears are ill-founded. I mean, it's perfectly fine when parents are concerned. My child was fine, they got a vaccine, now they're not fine. Could the vaccine have done it? Those are testable questions, and they've been answered. And so I guess the frustrating part is that when we have the answers, when we show vaccines don't cause autism or developmental delays or hyperactivity or whatever, that we can't convince some parents to believe it.
Well, that was exactly my point. The fact that there are still people out there to this day, while McCarthy has recanted what she said. We have the measles outbreak in California at this point. It's been tracked now to Arizona, to Mexico. There's now a case in Chicago they think might be connected. They're not sure how yet. But we have parents, and I've gotten into a discourse on Twitter and other social medias here, and arguments, if you will, with people who throw to me, they say the CDC says there's a connection. Here's this link that says there's a connection. Here's this study that says there's a connection. I send them the things that are sitting right there that are findable, and they tell me that it's all a conspiracy and the CDC is lying to them. How do we get through to these parents?
Beats me. I mean, I think that you don't. I think that for that solid hardcore that believes this is just a conspiracy theory among conspiracy among pharmaceutical companies and the government and the medical establishment, I think you don't get through to them. I mean, the fact of the matter is that before there was a measles vaccine, every year in this country, there were 3 to 4 million cases of measles, 48,000 hospitalizations, and 500 deaths. And yet still, if you look last night on CBS Evening News, they had a doctor on there who said measles is no big deal. So, we're at fault too. I mean, I think most doctors in our hospital here at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia have probably never seen measles, which is remarkable. I mean, it certainly was a huge disease when I was younger. And I guess at some level, vaccines are a victim of their own success.
All right, now talk about that. What do you mean a victim of their own success? Certainly, I know what you're talking about, the fact that it disappeared and nobody thought that there ever was a case of measles coming back. But then what are the doctors not doing on their end to make sure that they're getting through to their patients?
I think they're not being passionate enough. I think that they've been all too willing to let patients walk out of their office in an increasingly far too dangerous world. I think they have to say things like, let me love your child. Don't put me in a position to practice substandard care. There's more measles out there. There's more mumps out there. There's more whooping cough out there. I can't let you walk out of this hospital without putting your child in the safest position possible, and vaccines provide that safety.
All right, now I only got about a minute left before we take a break, come back, because we're going to talk a little bit more about this. But my granny told me never to call anybody stupid. However, in this case, when it comes down to the measles vaccination, measles being nearly eradicated, the problems that it can bring about for an entire society, how stupid are these people who don't get their kids vaccinated?
I think we don't learn from history. I was actually had to, unfortunately, live through the 1991 measles epidemic in Philadelphia, an epidemic that saw more than 1,400 people, mostly children, affected, and 9 children died. We had 9 children die in a 3-month period in Philadelphia. Live through that, be scarred by that, and you become a passionate advocate for vaccines. I think one of the big problems, though, is it's not just that parents don't see these diseases now. They didn't grow up with these diseases, not young parents, and that's true of also some young doctors, or many young doctors. And I think we just have to be far more passionate about what's at stake here.
You don't want to use the word stupid, do you? I just wanted to check, that's all. My granny said never use it, but every now and then I feel like you must. Hold on just a couple of minutes, Dr. Offit. We'll be right back after a break, because when we come back, you heard what the doctor said. In the incident that he talked about, 9 kids died. And there are some parents trying to make sure it doesn't happen to their kid. We'll return right here on MidPoint. Let's welcome back to MidPoint Professor of Vaccinology and Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Paul Offit joins us. Dr. Offit, let's get down to what some of the parents are doing right now, because here's a father in Marin County, California, who is going to the school and asking them, matter of fact, he's even talking about the potential of lawyers, say that the district require immunization as a condition of attendance, with the only exception being those who cannot medically be vaccinated. A, is this a good idea for parents that take this kind of pro-action stance? And B, are we getting to a point right now where we're going to have legislation and the government get involved to keep these people away from healthy children?
I think it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, look at it from this father's standpoint. He has a child who can't be vaccinated because he's immune compromised because of an underlying disease. That's true of about 500,000 people in this country. They can't be vaccinated because they're getting chemotherapy for their cancers, or they're getting immune suppressive therapy for their chronic disease, or because they're too young. And in the case of measles, less than a year of age. So is it your right as a parent to let your child catch and transmit a potentially fatal infection? You know, when you make that decision, you're not just making it for your child, you're making it for all the people with whom your child comes in contact. I think it's perfectly fair for that father to say, hey, I depend on society to protect my child. So I think you should treat me fairly.
I want to get down to some of the doctors being the problem again. You mentioned one thing, but let me bring this into the discussion here. The whole idea is what's called personal belief exemptions, which allow people to not have their child vaccinated, though. When we talk about this, when we look at the fact that there are parents wanting to do this right now, isn't part of the problem the doctors? Because I'm reading about some doctors right now who the parents are coming in saying, personal belief, boom, check, 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 just checking off the box and not being a little harsher on them to make sure that it's not just something foolish based on idiotic science.
Yes, there's actually 3 ways to exempt yourself from vaccines in this country. One is a medical exemption, which is to say you have, for example, an allergic reaction to a vaccine component, fair enough. The other 2 are nonsensical. One is, as you mentioned, a philosophical or personal belief exemption. First of all, vaccines aren't a belief system. They're an evidence-based system, and there's plenty of evidence to show you that they are what they're claimed to be. And then philosophy, philo, love, sophos, wisdom. Where's the wisdom that says it's better not to get a vaccine than get one? And the other way to exempt yourself is so-called religious exemptions, which makes even less sense to me. I mean, if religion teaches us anything, it's to care about our children. To put your child in harm's way in the name of religion, I think is not a religious act and shouldn't be given the legal protections of religion, frankly. So I think you're right. I think that father's right. I think medical exemptions are the only thing that make any sense in this country.
Here's some numbers. Measles. It can lead to pneumonia and encephalitis, and in about 1 in 1,000 cases, death. You talked about an instance where you had 9 children die. Let's look people in the eye right now before we leave and say that measles can kill the uninfected child. It can happen, and it can be someone who infects your child who is careless enough not to get them vaccinated. Yes or no?
Yes, and it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter how well nourished you are or what kind of shape you're in. Anybody can get measles and die from it. And so because anybody can get it, therefore all children are recommended to receive the vaccine.
Have we just gotten to the point where we see so many miracle cures on television, people saying one pill will do it all, that we seem to believe in that, and maybe that's part of the problem too? We're just being brainwashed here.
I think we just don't fear the disease. I think it's been so long since we've really suffered measles in this country that everybody assumes it's not a problem. But if you let your guard down, and we're letting our guard down, then very contagious diseases like measles are the first to come back. It's exactly what you'd expect.
What would you say to Jenny McCarthy these days? She's apparently recanted what she said, but it would certainly seem like she was the misinformation zero in all this, because, boy, I'll tell you, did it skyrocket after she said she didn't vaccinate her kid.
It's remarkable that people listen. When celebrities have a platform, we give them a platform, and most celebrities use that platform to do good. Jenny McCarthy chose to use her platform to do harm. I think it's unconscionable.
It is unconscionable. There's the possibility of death, and all it is a simple vaccination. Dr. Offit, I continue to fight this, and I continue to get in arguments with people about this, and I hope you continue to do the same, because we have to keep pushing this out there, that we've got to keep our kids and our society safe from something we can cure. Dr. Offit, thanks so much for your comments. I know we're going to talk again.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Yet another news point. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin wants this one to go away because the evidence still points to him or somebody else in poisoning a rival. That's up next when MidPoint continues.